I am very excited to bring back to you today Dr. Joseph Fraiman. Indeed I am. And it is, he is, of course, an ER physician and clinical researcher with a focus on harm-benefit analysis. He has been one of the clear thinkers and voices throughout the COVID situation. He is also a former medical manager of Louisiana's Urban Search and Rescue Disaster Task Force. He has a new project afoot that I believe I might end up supporting at the end of this conversation. The Hope Accord, it is called. And after I talk to Dr. Fraiman, there it is. We are going to speak with Stephanie. Hang on a second. I always screw up Stephanie's last name. Stephanie Van Watson. Stephanie is the brains behind FATTY. She's the veterinarian biochemist who made the observation that led to this supplement. We'll talk to her. We'll talk to Joseph Fraiman after this. Our laws as it pertains to substances are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, FATTY. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins, and a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue. And we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15. And of course, I'll be speaking to Stephanie Van Watson after we finish with Dr. Fraiman. And also want to mention that I do talk about mental health and well-being on my programs. Financial health, also very important. We live in uncertain and volatile times. No one knows what's going to happen exactly. It's crucial to protect yourself financially. Sleep well at night by investing in hard assets, including physical gold and silver. I do not give financial recommendations or advice, but in 2024, gold and silver are surging. Experts predict they will continue to climb. Historically, these have been among the safer investments, allowing you to hedge against runaway inflation. Protect yourself and your investments. Golden Crest Metals can help you move a portion of your IRA into gold or silver. Call Golden Crest Metals now at 833-426-3825 for a free guide on protecting your financial future with gold and silver, and see if you qualify for up to $5,000 in free silver. Call 833-426-3825 or visit goldencrestmetals.com to request your free info guide. That is goldencrest, C-R-E-S-T, metals.com. Now, through COVID, I have had the great good pleasure of speaking to people who helped me shape my opinion, who opened my eyes, who showed rational uncertainty in the face of changing information as opposed to irrational certitude, which certainly the government and the public health agencies maintained during much of this. As you know, Dr. Bhattacharya was somebody I looked to and admired very much. But Joseph Fraiman was also one of those people. He's become in amongst my lexicon of heroes. So, Dr. Fraiman, welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. That was very nice of you. And yeah,
I,
no, I
I mean
appreciate
it. I went when you first told me what you were looking at and that what you went after, and I literally was, you were astonished, I was astonished, and the astonishment did not stop with your initial observations. So I'm wondering, and by the way, if you want to follow Dr. Fraiman, let me give you the particulars on X and whatnot. Joseph Fraiman, Fraiman on X, also thehopeaccord.org, which we're going to get into in a few minutes. But I wonder if you could sort of chronicle for me how this started for you, how you arrived at some of the conclusions you did, and how you've evolved since we last spoke nearly a year ago.
Well, I mean, my time period through COVID-19 started with I'm an emergency physician, and in where I was in Louisiana, we were very early with our COVID-19 surge, and within my hospital, where I work, it's a rural hospital, and I see, when anything goes wrong at night, I have to respond. I'm the only physician in the hospitals that I work in, and so when large numbers of people start dying, that's unusual. That's something it was very noticeable. And when COVID-19 first broke in the first surge in, March into April, we were seeing, probably 3 times, 4 times the number of cardiac arrests that we would be seeing in a normal month. And then it dropped back to normal and returned again with the following surges. And through that viewpoint, I, was very on board with almost all of the aggressive measures that we were doing at that time, that we were encouraging, all of the lockdown measures. And with time, my views developed as data was collected based on a lot of these various measures. And as they appeared to be they were clearly harmful, and I knew that, but we needed to stop COVID was my view at the time. And I was willing to, consider these potential measures up until I started realizing that the data didn't really support their efficacy. And I'm still actually shocked to this day about how ineffective many of our various measures were. And then when the COVID-19 vaccine came around, I was excited as everyone else, but that is sort of my area of research, understanding clinical interventions, evaluating in a harm-benefit analysis. And initially, I wasn't concerned about harms from the vaccine. I was a bit more concerned initially that the efficacy may have been overestimated in the clinical trial for various reasons. And I tried to get those points out to the public and through various news agencies, and realized that wasn't really possible at the time. There was no, even though the concerns were very reasonable. In fact, my concerns were actually pushed through various scientists up to the top chief of Biden's COVID response team, where I was in an email conversation with him regarding this. He had told me my concerns, really, that he had his guys look into it and the concerns were unwarranted, but he would not offer the data from the clinical trial. And at that moment, I started becoming much more concerned that with this vaccine, eventually, only several months later, becoming very concerned again now about the harms. And that was the moment in April 2021 when 2 studies came out that essentially confirmed that the spike protein within COVID-19 was toxic, and that it was causing all of the things that we were seeing in the ER, in the ICUs, that people with COVID were having. And it was heart attacks, strokes. They were causing weird stomach issues. There was weird blood clots in places they don't usually happen. And when we learned that the spike protein was harmful, that was highly concerning to me, yet I was taken aback by the lack of concern from the general government governing bodies. And I began a study essentially that began trying to look into the harms of the COVID vaccine, that led to a reanalysis with a team of 7 international scientists, that we eventually concluded that by looking at the analysis, understanding by taking a list that was created by a group called the Brighton Collaboration, which is a group endorsed by the World Health Organization that contains adverse events that were believed to potentially be caused by the vaccine, to look out for them, essentially. And when we looked at the COVID vaccine trials, we found that there was an increase in these serious adverse events at a rate of about 1 in 800 from these COVID vaccines, as seen in the original trials. And that has, it caused some controversy, but I still to this day stand by our study that it identified that there's definitely a serious concern for serious harms from these vaccines. And that's sort of a real quick, rapid view of the last couple of years of my life.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware of that you've been busy with this stuff and trying to practice medicine. But let me ask a couple questions about this. So one of the astonishing findings, in addition to the fact that you uncovered exactly the rate of serious adverse consequence that Pfizer, I believe it was the Pfizer study that had discovered as well, you somehow got a meeting with the FDA, which is sort of extraordinary. I'm curious how that happened. And then in the meeting, when you started raising issues about specific adverse events, there was sort of like, no, don't worry about it. And you were like, and as I recall, said essentially, well, how do you determine if something is an adverse event from the vaccine or not? And their response to you was essentially, we got a guy that checks it out. So how did you get to the FDA, and is my memory correct about the guy?
Yes, your memory about this guy who the FDA has, where he seems to possess a magical power that he's able to investigate a serious adverse event and look at it over and just determine if that serious adverse event was caused by the vaccine. And we're very unlucky that this man wasn't around for Vioxx, because he could probably tell the difference between a Vioxx heart attack and a regular heart attack, and he probably would have spotted that. So, I actually don't know what the FDA will do if this guy leaves, because I don't know if anyone else in the world possesses such a magical power. But yes, the world should know that the FDA has a man with that claimed ability, that he's able to evaluate these adverse events and simply determine it, despite it being a randomized trial where the only difference between the groups is the vaccine or the medical intervention. And the way that we've done medicine for a pretty long time is we say, if there's a difference between the groups in a randomized trial, since the only difference between them is the medical intervention, we typically tie that adverse event to that medical intervention. And it's really difficult to say if a drug causes heart attacks, if that was a heart attack drug, the drug caused that heart attack, or it was just a regular one. It's sort of impossible. So that is something that was real.
Not sort of. It's actually impossible. It's impossible.
I believe so. I believe so.
Yeah,
I don't know how he's doing it. I will at least say that. I have no idea how he's possibly doing that. But the way that we got the meeting with the FDA is our study. We had submitted it to, I believe at that point, maybe four journals, and none of them went to reviewers. Each journal had said to us that they had many important articles that month, and and they can't accept everything. And each time we got this response, we were all really curious as to what the other articles that they were going to publish that was going to be of greater importance, because this seemed really relevant at that moment in time, that the vaccine appears to be causing an increase in serious adverse events that we didn't know about. So, but we were rejected by so many journals that we thought that we might be trying to publish this for a pretty long time. And so we figured that we needed the FDA to know about our findings, because that's obviously the responsible thing to do for the government body that's responsible for, our drug regulation. And when they received our this is a pre version of our final manuscript, but they met with us with 7 of their top leaders to discuss it and to hear what we had to say.
One of the physicians there was a rheumatologist who'd lost a 7 or 8-year-old just a few weeks before, and they had not yet responded to her. I will tell you, I had a 100-year-old that had a severe vaccine reaction, and when you sign up at VAERS, they tell you, "Oh, we're on it. We'll let you know if this is relevant." I guess he decided it wasn't a vaccine reaction, even though it was within an hour of an injection to this 100-year-old's arm with a atrial arrhythmia that she'd never had before. So, okay, I guess it had nothing to do with it. And by the way, 100-year-olds, as you know, don't like to go to the ER or the hospital, so I had to manage her as an outpatient, which was a challenge, and she made it, but it was a life-threatening event. And nothing from VAERS, nothing from anybody. So what happened with that rheumatology case? Did anybody ever follow up on that?
I believe eventually he did get an email from them. I don't know the details of how they ended up recording it, or if they
did the guy think it had something to do with the vaccine?
Oh, I believe. Yeah, no, the physician, the rheumatologist, did believe that this.
No, not the rheumatologist. The magical man, the magic man.
Oh, I don't know if he investigated it. I don't know. I really don't know if he
really. So one of the odd things about this. Now I know you've evolved further. Now we're going to get into the Hope Accord in a second, but one of the sort of head shaking aspects of this for me was started around last fall, where I was like you, convinced that, oh, here we go. This was during the call. This is what the rheumatologist said. There is something wrong with the reporting system, but there does seem to be. I can tell you, if a 100-year-old with a life-threatening event. By the way, I didn't see much else with the elderly patients, which is kind of interesting. All my patients were vaxxed and boosted, and not much. And I think it benefited them during the Alpha and Delta phase when I was an enthusiast like you were. But then things came around, Omicron came around, the adverse events started accumulating. You and I talked. And one of the things I was thoroughly convinced of was the toxicity or the pathogenicity of the spike protein. And I could not understand why the extraordinary push for this one form of vaccine when there were whole viral options out there. Why did you have any sense of what that was? What's your theory?
When the data came in, I understand that prior to April 2021, that there were people who had hypotheses that the spike protein was toxic. I was unaware of them, but it seemed to be confirmed in April 2021, about 4 or 5 months after the vaccine was released or on the emergency use. And my thought at the time was, this is really bad luck, because I initially, I was very concerned about the novelty of the platform, but the protein itself was never a concern. But now we just created this vaccine that makes our bodies create a protein that we just learned is causing various different types of toxic effects in humans. And my initial reaction was this is a disaster, and why the response of the government was essentially the CDC put on its website that to say the spike protein is toxic is a myth. And
oh my God,
that was on the CDC website for some time, and they said that it stays in your arm, which the vaccine stays in your arm, which to me, as a unless you have something that is specifically built to do that, like a depot shot that typically lasts for months, there's really not anything that you could inject into a muscle that just stays in the muscle. So I thought, especially a
lipid bilayer, it's going to designed to go everywhere.
And lipids tend to travel through the body, and I was shocked that they were saying that this is not going to move around the body. And then the next thing that they would say about the spike protein was that the spike protein in the vaccine and the spike protein of the virus are different, which is really silly, because if they are, then your vaccine won't work at all, because they need to be the same, or we have a serious problem here. And for efficacy, we need it to work. And if they're different, then how will it protect against the spike protein on the vaccine if you've given a different one? So these were a lot of pretty silly responses to it. There was no serious. I didn't feel like there were really any serious responses to this concern. So yeah, I don't know what happened to the
I don't know if you noticed, Dr. Redfield, in some of his congressional testimony recently, said specifically we should hold the spike virus vaccines, and he's in favor of whole viral vaccines. And I thought, okay, took you 2 years to say that, but it's a very reasonable position, and it seems to have kind of gone into the ethers without anybody grabbing onto it.
Yeah, I mean that. I would say we would need a trial first, and an FDA approved trial. Although I've lost confidence in our FDA's approval judgment, but I believe that for any sort of whole vaccine that we were attempting to push forward, I would want to see a trial that was designed to show that it reduced hospitalizations. But I think that would be a very reasonable type of vaccine to be looking into, for sure.
And Covaxin's been out there, hundreds of millions of arms probably, but the other point you mentioned, I noticed you said hospitalizations. The endpoints on the original study from Pfizer were weird, as you pointed out to everybody.
They were cold-like symptoms, reducing cold-like symptoms, and that's nice. That sounds nice. I mean, if I was getting something. If the vaccine was created for the rhinovirus and we were trying to prevent cold symptoms, I think that would be a very reasonable endpoint for the rhinovirus vaccine, which I don't believe exists. But if you're testing it for something that's supposed to prevent hospitalizations and death, then you should have a study that shows it prevents hospitalizations and death, not cold-like symptoms.
And by the way, they went out promoting the fact that they had something that prevented hospitalizations and death, yet they did not. Which is, again, just the ethics of this is just so. I mean, what's your theory? What happened to us? What happened here? Do you have a theory?
I think that there was a lot of
panic, delusion, mass psychosis. I mean, I'm beginning to think that way. What is it?
I think there was a lot of forces involved in this, and I believe part of it was that there was some legit fear. Part of that fear, I think, was induced by our government officials. But I think that, when there's companies that stand to make billions and billions of dollars, and these companies tend to have a large amount of influence within these government bodies and within all of the public health departments of our country. And their influence is very great.
Interesting that you...
Could you repeat that?
Yeah,
could you repeat that? You were breaking up. This is the good part.
YouTube scrambled us for a second there. Evidently,
it's the CCP, honey. It's the CCP.
Say it again.
Yeah, no, I believe that a large part of what occurred here is there was a problem that our industries, the pharmaceutical industry specifically, stood to make billions of dollars, specifically $100 billion for Pfizer. And they have great influence over our government bodies, and they have a lot of control over our local public health departments. And I believe that they ended up using some of that influence to sort of guide our society towards accepting a vaccine with the trial data that I would hope we would ask for more. We'd ask for better data. But they, I believe, had a huge influence on this. In addition to the fear, they played into the fear that was widespread through our society.
Deeply disappointing, and on the scale of disgusting, if indeed that is what we determined this whole thing was when the day is done. But it may well be so. Do you find it odd that there are all these political campaigns going on, Republican convention. Nobody mentions COVID or the excesses or what one team did versus the other team did or didn't do. Is it because both sides have a certain amount of guilt and culpability for how this went down?
I think that quite clearly this was not, while today it sometimes is looked at as a right wing and a left wing sort of position, I don't believe that in the time period that it was happening, that it was a left wing or right wing position. The lockdowns and the lockdowns occurred under President Trump. Many Republican states had pretty severe lockdowns, and so I don't think that this. I would say I don't believe that any Democratic states were essentially lockdown free, in the sense that only really Florida was the only ones that really early on was pushing against these and raising concerns that keeping kids out of school was potentially harmful, and or that closing small businesses is potentially harmful. Really, this was mostly Florida. There may have been a handful of other Republican states that pushed it not nearly as strong, but many Republican states had severe lockdowns, and so I don't think that it's an issue that the Republicans can present as a thing that they own. That they were the ones who fought against destroying small businesses. That they were the ones who fought against closing schools. They did not as a group.
Yeah. Interesting. So Susan, you were asking that question, and then I think Joseph has a pretty interesting response there. So here's what I want to do. We're having a little bit of technical weirdness here, and I don't know if Caleb can solve that maybe during a little commercial break. But after the break, I want to get at the Hope Accord, how you got to that point. I worry about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I am thoroughly convinced that the spike protein is the problem. In fact, we now know clearly that this amount of spike and the amount of spike antibody is a predictor of long COVID. If you have long COVID, you have persistent spike, and one of the ways to get persistent spike is put a little machine in your body that creates lots of spike, particularly after the second and third vaccine and booster. Vaccine, so-called, for all of you that hate that. So I worry. I'm convinced on that, but I worry that if we're going to condemn the technology, there may be circumstances where it could have utility, such as in terminal illness or potentially terminal illness, or things where it's worth the risk of having these lipoproteins and pseudouridines and things flying around our body. Maybe it's worth that risk in certain settings, but certainly pausing this vaccine makes sense to me. So we'll talk about that. Joseph Fraiman, you can follow him, Fraiman, I beg your pardon, on X, Fraiman. I think you understand why I'm an enthusiast of him and his work just by listening to his story and history here and the work he has done. He has now not stopped. He has not dropped the crucible and is moving forward with something that this audience will like very, very much, because I know the people that watch this show are mortified by the vaccine for the most part. So we'll get into the Hope Accord after this. Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I'll introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsudin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsudin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsudin so unique. In clinical trials, capsudin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsudin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsudin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted about what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off.
I ain't Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew. You want to spend the whole session talking about Dr. Drew?
There you go. Even you call him Dr. Drew.
Drew, your mic is muted. FYI.
There we go. We're working on some technical problems here, and that, but I was saying that how much of an NR fan I am, so people know that. Also, GLP-1, people talk a lot about that. It's the hormone that lets you know you are full, amongst other things. Affects your brain and your gut in a coordinated fashion. Affects emptying of the gut. So if you're not trying to cut down, highly processed foods make you more hungry, of course, because they're digested amongst other things quickly, and they spike protein. They can spike insulin. Whole foods like Paleo Valley's grass-fed meat products have, amongst other things, gelatin that has been shown to elevate GLP-1. Autumn Smith, CEO, says she uses the bone broth in the waning hours of intermittent fasting, which I did yesterday, and it really helped. Why, if it technically breaks the fast? Because she will not overeat when she sits down for the actual meal. It's only like 100 calories in a scoop of that chocolate bone broth. Susan and I have the same experience, as I said, with the Paleo Valley's grass-fed, finished bone broth. Comes in chocolate, vanilla, and unflavored. And of course, the meat sticks. Get yours today at drdrew.com, drdrew.com/Paleo Valley for 15% off your first order. And make sure you do not run out. You can subscribe and save 20% at drdrew.com/Paleo Valley. Joseph Fraiman is our guest today. I'm delighted to have him here and get an update on what he's been up to and thinking about the, let's face it, what has become, frankly, a debacle. You can follow him on X at Joseph Fraiman, Fraiman. It's up there on the screen as well. And so the Hope Accord, how did you get there? Bring us through that history.
Yeah, so there's 12 physicians and scientists who we came together to write the Hope Accord. And we painstakingly many hours we put into making sure this was carefully written. And it has 5 major points that we're asking people to sign on to. If you're a physician, a scientist, any health professional, or just any part of the concerned public, we're asking them to sign. And the 5 points, and we can go through each one. It's one, the first is that we want to pull the messenger COVID vaccines off the market. The second point is that we believe that we have to have a properly done reevaluation of the safety and efficacy of these products. The third point is we want to support the vaccine injured. The fourth point is we need a return to the ethical principles that we abandoned during the COVID era. And the fifth point is that we need a root cause analysis into how exactly we got into this mess. And I'm happy to go through all of these points. I believe that points 2 through 5 are pretty self-explanatory, and I'm happy to go through them. But point 1 is the one that catches most people, that we want to pull this vaccine, the messenger RNA COVID vaccine product, off of the market. And I'm more than happy to go into why I think that actually most people would agree with this, even people who are maybe hesitant to hear that at first. But I do believe that the majority of the population would actually agree with this. And I'm confused at even why we have to create such an accord to ask for such a thing.
I completely agree with you that, the idea, and it sort of strikes me when you say it, that, what's the root for which we abandon our basic ethical obligations and principles. That is so clearly what happened. And so, again, people on the Restream and on the Rumble rants are taking aim at me saying that, oh, you're always confused, you're always astonished. It's the money, don't you know? But you don't know how mind-blowing it is to watch professional peers that you've worked alongside of and admired suddenly engage in behavior that is reprehensible and inexplicable, and it just was. It's still mind-blowing to me. So maybe my confusion and my astonishment is sort of a defense against what probably would be rage, I guess. But the reality is we did do that. And do people push back on looking at the root cause?
No, I've not heard anyone push back on looking at the root causes of what's gone wrong. I think that in general, no matter what your belief is on anything that's happened during the COVID response, I don't know anyone who's ever said, "Oh, I think what we did was great. We did a great job. We should do it exactly the same way if it happens again." I've never heard anyone say that, and still we're having trouble pulling together an investigation to figure out what went wrong, what went right, if anything went right. And but yeah, no, I have not really heard much opposition to it, yet still it hasn't happened is the thing.
Yeah, which is astonishing to me. Not forget root cause, just an acknowledgement of what was wrong and what was right. Just although you're starting to see a little bit of testimony in the government halls that starts to make sense to me and seems honest and seems reasonable. It's like, okay, you guys, you had lost your brain and you've got your brain back. I was trying to think of how to communicate to the person how amazing this is. It'd be like if you were in an army troop or something and you were all doing the same thing, trained the same way, going after the same goals, and all of a sudden everyone around you started doing nonsensical behaviors that you couldn't understand, none of which you could make sense of. It was just such an extraordinary experience, and if you were one of those people that lost your head, I'm sure certainly in certain ways I did. I tried to look at it very carefully. It's really important that you examine this and don't do that again.
Yeah, when I was the manager of the Louisiana's Disaster Task Force 1, after any disaster that we would respond to, we would have something that we called a hot wash, where we would all sit around in a room and discuss in that disaster response what we did correctly, what we did wrong, how can we improve for the next time. And that happens after every single disaster response. I know that happens for every FEMA disaster team in the country. I presume something similar, they may have a different term for it in the military, something similar would happen. And the fact that as a country, we had a disaster that occurred. And, even if things went well in a disaster response, we would have the hot wash to discuss how to do it better, what went wrong, what we could do better. here, this clearly went poorly, and there's really no one who thinks it went well in this response, and we're still not allowing a conversation on where things went wrong, and that is sort of a crazy thing that we don't have that conversation yet.
And let's be clear, it's not just disaster response in medicine where people examine what they did wrong or did right. There are morbidity and mortality reports. There are infection control meetings. I mean, that's how medicine is founded, on looking at what we did right and wrong and sort of beating each other up about it a little bit, and examining it under the microscope and sharing ideas and learning from our mistakes, if they were mistakes, or from our proper choices. And it all went away. Is there, I guess it begs a really significant question. Is something happening in our profession where, that people are not able to maintain a commitment to their basic standards, or has it become so fragmented? Like, I've noticed so many young physicians aren't really trained in the hospital. They don't spend any time in the hospital to speak of, compared to the amount of time you and I spent in hospitals. Is that maybe having an effect where people are sort of drifting from the communal practices of medicine, or you know what I'm saying? Is there anything like that happening, do you think?
I believe that the inability to speak openly on these topics is probably the major reason for what's going on, and the fear that has ripped through the medical physicians has been dramatic. I mean, even for this Hope Accord, we've heard from many physicians who want to sign it but are scared to, and that's still today in 2024. And so I
feel it. I feel that too. I get it.
So I think that when we create the environment that is preventing physicians from speaking openly, what we're witnessing as a society isn't the true position of our physician community. And I believe that these physicians who are there's the ones who are keeping quiet and they know something is wrong. And then there's a whole, probably a larger group of them who may not even realize it. But if they were able to hear the physicians who do realize that something is wrong, that would maybe change their views. Instead, they're keeping earmuffs on and blinders, so that, because they know that if they even entertain some of these ideas, it can threaten them professionally. And it's easier to not know than to learn about it. And so when we create this in such a sensorial environment that can just censor and ruin careers, seriously, we're not going to get our physicians, to be honest.
I remember during the opioid thing, when I was fighting against that mightily, and what I would hear from was Department of Mental Health, California Medical Association, the licensing BUMQA, my hospital administration. I was sort of an employee. I was sort of administrative employee, but it didn't have the same. It was a nuisance. It was threatening. And it went on for a decade, and it was horrible to have people that respect you telling you you're a dinosaur, or you're only interested in people suffering, and and meantime they were killing my patients just one after the other, just murdered for negligent manslaughter. I'm sorry, that's what it was, and fighting, and then finally one day, oh, it's the drug company's fault. Oh, we're overprescribing. I was trained that way. I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, well, this is the thing, that somebody does know. Why didn't you know? Why weren't you thinking? What happened to your brain? Why can't you think independently? And I think all that is worse now, maybe because we're employed more than not. That we're employees and we're fearful of losing our jobs and fearful of hearing from our employer, and the actual. Maybe it's the authority of the physician to be able to be autonomous is what's underlying, or what we're learning about. That's such a deep threat, to be an autonomous thinker.
No, the opioid crisis, I believe, is a very similar type situation. The analogies are run across the whole thing, and but in the same way that if you spoke out against the opioid overprescribing at the time, you were, considered this, heinous human being who doesn't care about people.
Yes.
And
that's correct.
and when actually you were speaking out because you cared about people. And that has been the
Correct.
exact same playbook that's been used on people who've raised concerns about the COVID-19 vaccines. That these are people who are
Yes.
concerned about people. They don't. It's not that they're not raising concerns because they don't care. They're raising concerns because they do care. And you have a different opinion maybe in the interpretation of the data. However, it is not a lack of ethics or a lack of care. That is and
Right.
that's used because it's if you do not have a logical argument to argue with, then it is much better to appeal to an emotional argument. And that is, I believe, why they're doing this for the COVID vaccines and why it happened during the opioid crisis.
Yes, the ad hominem attacks. The other thing you had with the opioid crisis, exact same thing. You had physicians that evangelized for heavy opiate prescribing. So you had a group of pain medicine doctors that literally went around the country lecturing about how you have to, the pain is what the patient says it is, pain is the fifth vital sign, patient determines when pain is controlled, your doctor doesn't, you do. And, you know, I mean, these were evangelizing on the topic, not religious evangelist for opiates. And they got control. The drug companies, of course, blew wind into those sails, but those folks got control of the regulators. And once the regulators were involved, that's when it completely went off the chain. That's when it became recalcitrant.
Yeah, I know. I would agree. And if I can bring it back here to the Hope Accord, because I do want to mention
Yes,
what
please.
the details of this mentions. And we want to pull the vaccines off the market. And if for people who are considering signing this document, I want to be clear. It's if you've always wanted to pull the vaccines off the market or you thought they never should have been approved, this is obvious. You are an obvious signer. However, there's a group of people who believe that the COVID vaccines were maybe approved, their emergency use authorization was a good thing. There are people who see that there was a benefit of the COVID vaccines during a certain time period, but they also now can see that under the current situation, the virus itself is not harming people at the same rate. They also can see that it's uncertain if the vaccine is even effective against this less harmful virus. They also have learned that this vaccine is definitely causing harm and maybe causing harms that we don't even yet have fully grasped, that we have not yet fully grasped. Now, under such a situation, a medical intervention with known harms, but unknown benefits, it's confusing why our government is still recommending the messenger RNA vaccine to anyone and why they haven't pulled it off the market already. But we wrote the Hope Accord very carefully in mind with these people, I think like yourself, Dr. Drew, who saw that maybe there was a benefit of it and they believed maybe it was a good idea, but they can see that today, clearly no one should be taking this anymore. There is not a group that we know of that benefits from this. We have no evidence to find that group. They might exist. I don't know. I'd be surprised if we can find them with well-done trials, but we won't find them unless these products are pulled off the market and then evaluated in real clinical trials that evaluate them for a hospitalization benefit, an all-cause hospitalization benefit, given we know that they are causing serious harms. And so we need to know that it's taking people out of the hospital more than it's putting them in there. And without that, we're driving blind. And we don't do that in the medical industry. We don't recommend everyone 6 months and up take a drug, a medical intervention that we're like, maybe it works. It definitely hurts you. That would be crazy. And we typically do not do such a thing. Now, so I believe that actually the majority of the medical community, and also I can see that the population at whole kind of already agrees with this because nobody's taking this anymore except for maybe about 10%, maybe less than 10% of people are taking boosters today. So why are we still recommending this? I would be very happy.
I had this conversation. By the way, you're not talking about getting mRNA vaccines in total off the market, just this vaccine with the Hope Accord.
No, no, this is specific to the COVID messenger RNA vaccine product. The Hope Accord is specific to that. I would ask, personally, I would say that any novel product should just be set to rigorous clinical trials that show a clinical outcome that's important, then that the benefits outweigh the harms. And that would be true for
signing it now. I am signed. Okay. I'm with you. I'm in your team. And a lot of it is because of you, because I admire your persistence. I admire your clarity. I admire the work you've done. And I trust that your instinct is correct on this. And this is the right thing to do. Even though it's a little bit confusing to me, I'm not sure I would have gone all the way here on my own, but I am there with you. So you can count on me.
We appreciate that. Yeah, we appreciate that.
I am signed. For those of you that like to be critical of me on the restreams and the Rumble rants, I am signed. Okay, guys. The other thing is somebody's calling me Paxlovid Drew. I was going to say that it's odd. I had this conversation with a patient this morning who was ruminating whether he should get the vaccine. And I said, we had an outbreak here, a nasty one, and I've had people seemingly impact on transmission through nasal lavage with saline and with betadine. Seems like that's helping reduce transmission. And it's a lot of high fever and frustration with this particular outbreak. And Paxlovid works in 12 hours. In 12 hours, they are not just better, well. So why would we need a vaccine for something that has a very effective treatment available? Why would we even be thinking about that? It's let's do the preventions, any harm done, and let's treat it if you want if it's getting bad. That's it. There you go. Is there more? Am I missing something?
Well, personally, I have not admitted a patient to the hospital for COVID-19 since February of 2022 with a COVID-19 syndrome. Yeah. I have admitted many people who happen to have COVID-19 they were unaware of, and they were admitted for something else. Yeah. But I'm not saying that no one's being admitted to the hospital but for COVID-19, but it has become an incredibly rare event. My personal experience as an emergency physician is actually predictive in many ways of what's happening in this country, and that when we were seeing COVID cases rise, hospitalizations rise, deaths rise, I saw that. I saw those happening, but not since February 2022. I've seen cases come and go since February 2022, but I have not been seeing serious cases. So I have no idea if the vaccine even can prevent those ultra rare cases that do need hospitalization. I'm actually uncertain if it does. So I think that there are various interventions and that are quite safe, as you point to. I'm a little bit more hesitant with Paxlovid due to the interactions that are so common within the group that typically needs it. But so many various interventions.
They stopped their atorvastatin, they stopped their cardizem for a couple of days. Who cares? No big deal. They've been on it for 20 years. Is it 4 days off going to make a difference? No.
Fair. It's the thing that people usually turn it down for me for is when I tell them about the bounce back, they say, "Why would that sounds like a terrible idea?"
Yeah. Well, if they're having mild illness, you don't want to put your risk for the bounce back. But in the last 2 months, I saw lots of bounce back a year ago and 2 years ago, and it was nasty, a bad cough that persisted. People did not like it at all. But I've seen none of it, and I've used it quite a bit lately. No bounce back. And actually, in this particular variant, no cough. Nobody had a cough. Everybody just had fever and like flu syndrome.
I've noted that too, that it has been relatively few having a problem with cough. I agree. That's what I've been noticing as well.
Yeah.
Now,
listen.
Thank you for bring up the COVID. And one other thing, if anyone who's listening who disagrees on the withdrawal, a physician or a scientist who disagrees with me on that we should be withdrawing this vaccine, I would very much like to hear your point of view on why you think this product should stay on the market. I would be happy. I'm sure Dr. Drew would have us on here to have a discussion, and you could push your point. And I would love to have that discussion, because I honestly cannot think of a reason why we should be keeping this product on the market. And if I am not thinking of something that you can explain to me, I'm willing to change my point of view. But I really am confused here, and I'm sure that a lot of other people are confused, and those people are going to be signing the Hope Accord. Because if there is a reason that we should keep this on the market, then please let us know. Please let us know, because I am unaware of
completely
any.
agree. Completely agree. It's got to be in the throwing the baby out with the bathwater sort of zone. But for this particular product, I don't get it. I don't see it. So, Aris, listen, I hope you'll come back again soon as things evolve, and if we get that debate together, I would love to do that as well. And hope to see you soon. Maybe we go down to the South once in a while. Maybe we'll actually get a chance to meet you in person.
Oh, that would be great. I'd love to see if you're down here in New Orleans.
You bet.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Dr. Joseph Fraiman on X. Now we are going to switch gears. Let me get my stuff up here so I can make sure that I give all the proper links. This is really an interesting topic, which I'm going to bring you in a mere moments. The biochemist, veterinarian who brought us Fatty, a product that I use and I make my whole family use, and we are delighted to be including in our family of products that we support here. Her name is Stephanie Van. You can follow at Meet Fatty15. The Meet is MEET, Fatty15. And also dr.com/fatty15. Let's see if there's other places. She suggests Seraphin Therapeutics as well, SERAPHIN, Seraphina Therapeutics, I beg your pardon, .com, and discoverc15.com and fatty15.com. Please welcome Stephanie Van Watson. Stephanie, welcome.
Hi, Dr. Drew. Wonderful being here.
It's great to have you. So if you wouldn't mind, tell people the story that led to this discovery, and then we'll talk about the benefits once you've sort of given us that your own personal saga.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it starts with, I'll start with the end, which is what we just published in the journal Metabolites a couple of weeks ago, which is that we have found the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years. And it's caused by deficiencies in an odd chain saturated fat called C15 or pentadecanoic acid. And all the discovery of C15, its importance came from unexpectedly work with Navy dolphins, in which I, as a veterinarian, was working with the Navy dolphins. They get a lot older than they get in the wild. In the wild, they live to 20. At the Navy, they live 40 to 50 years old. We were seeing that some dolphins, but not all, were getting chronic conditions like chronic inflammation and high cholesterol, fatty liver disease, even the full suite of changes consistent with Alzheimer's. So what we were able to do is we use this advanced technology called metabolomics. And we were able to study thousands of small molecules present in the dolphin's blood as well as in their all fish diet. And we expected it to be omega-3, to be honest. We thought omega-3 would predict the healthiest aging dolphins. And instead, it wasn't omega-3s, it was this C15 fatty acid. So we moved C15 into the lab. We spent 3 years doing 8 studies, and that resulted in a paper we published in Scientific Reports in 2020, in which we showed that C15 met the rare criteria of being the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in over 90 years since omega-3. So we have been working with C15 since then, helping to find ways to bring it back to the world. It's helping to solve the question of nutritional deficiencies, of why did we see before COVID, right? Why did we see an increase in type 2 diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver disease, and different types of cancers in younger and younger people starting around, in the 2000s? That continued past COVID, continues today to where even our lifespans are decreasing. There was a new way that our cells were dying called ferroptosis that was discovered by Columbia University scientists, and nobody could figure out what was causing this new form of cell death that was accelerating our aging. So this paper that we just came out with basically explains that C15 nutritional deficiencies, now present in as many as 1 in 3 people, may in fact be the cause of this new form of cell death that's accelerating our aging and leading to this onset. The upside of it, right, is that nutritional deficiencies like C15 and scurvy and vitamin D and rickets is that this is something we can fix. So super excited to be talking about that today.
Yeah, this is a big deal, and I want to talk a little more about the cellular fragility syndrome and how. And I want to get nerd out a little bit on the science. I know people their eyes glaze over when you get too into that, but I want to make sure we just put the basic structures out there about the lipid peroxidase and ferroptosis and how that works. But before we do, what was I going to ask? I hope I'm going to take my fatty so I can improve my aging memory issues. I was going to ask why. It takes a minute, but it comes. I was going to ask, why are we so deficient in C15 rather?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dr. Drew. So for the dolphins became deficient in C15 because there was less C15 in the fish that they were eating. For us, our primary source of C15 is whole dairy fat. So 1977, Congress made a very strange move, which was to release dietary recommendations for all of us, in which they encouraged us to reduce our intake of all saturated fats. The best way to do that was to reduce our intake of whole dairy fat and butter. So as the baby in the bathwater story continues, right, that because we did decrease our intake of the bad saturated fats called C16 and C18, we also lost this essential odd chain saturated fatty acid C15. So our levels have been precipitously declining over the last 20 to 30 years.
And so it should be part of our routine healthcare to maintain our levels of C15. And do you have any specific data you can talk about on reversals of any disease processes or any research underway that way?
Absolutely. So, for the first part was association, that when we saw in the dolphins with higher C15 had a lower risk of developing a syndrome, which involved metabolism, fatty liver disease, chronic inflammation, insulin resistance. And it ends up that the same, right. This is ends up the same story was playing out in humans for us, just exactly as you said. So that there are now meta-analyses, so studies of very large prospective cohort studies showing the same thing. People who have lower levels of C15 have a higher risk of not only having, but developing type 2 diabetes, heart disease, fatty liver disease, and certain types of cancers. What we've been able to show beyond the association with 10 years of research is we and others around the world have been able to show how C15 works, how it actively helps to repair cells, how it effectively restores insulin sensitivity and decreases inflammation, all of these components. And wonderfully, it all starts from really the integrity and the health of our cell, and everything else flows after that, which is what an essential fatty acid should do. You were talking about the lipid membrane, bilayer membrane. That's what the whole job of our cell membrane is, to protect and armor our cells against breakdown and attack. And if they become weak, they become fragile. C15's main job is really to keep our cells strong and resistant against attack.
Uh-oh. 1 second.
I'm going to speculate on it. What's that, Caleb?
Sorry, you froze for a second. I thought you were just sitting very still.
I froze or both froze?
No, just you. She was great.
We were trying to hear her. We can't hear what she's saying very well.
Does Stephanie need to repeat what she said?
No. Everything she said was fine.
I was listening in the other room.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's just an issue on your internet
we
side.
We apologize. We're having ghosts over here.
Yeah, but I want to ask a question. I'm going to ask you to speculate and not responsibly. It's just sort of an interesting question. One of the organelles that is becoming really significant in our understanding of aging and maintaining our mass, for instance, is of course the mitochondria. And mitochondria have lipid bilayer membranes that get old and get screwed up too. Is that part of the lipid peroxidation cycle that we're interrupting with fatty 15? Do we know that yet, or we hope to find that, or where does that stand?
No, you're right. You're spot on. We know that on the disease side, that if we don't have enough C15, then our cells become fragile. This generates lipid peroxidation that then combines with iron that may be present in the cell. That creates reactive oxygen species that then go and attack our mitochondria, exactly what you're saying, Dr. Drew. So it attacks the mitochondria, takes it out, and that kills our cell. So it's critical to keep our mitochondria healthy. So C15 deficiencies actually lead to mitochondrial death, is what we published in the most recent paper. Importantly, putting C15 back into the system, we were able to show repairs mitochondrial function. And so it helps allows our mitochondria to stay healthy, generate the energy it needs to generate, and do its job.
I guess what I was asking was, so it's a secondary phenomenon that the mitochondrial membrane gets hit. Are there any primary deteriorations of mitochondrial membrane, or is that we don't know that yet?
We don't know yet. It's a great question, because if it's happening around the outside of the cell, chances are exactly what you're getting to, it's happening.
That's what I'm thinking. And the other thing I'm speculating about, this is again me being irresponsible because the science isn't up to it yet though, but I'm going to just throw it out there, which is a lot of stuff I was reading recently about mitochondrial health and sarcopenia, which is one of the major problems with aging, as we lose our skeletal muscle mass. And so it's just another reason to emphasize mitochondrial health, that if they are being destroyed, the lipid membranes, or secondarily through ferroptosis, it's a big deal, not just in terms of disease process, overall health, but this thing that we're all trying to prevent as we age, which is sarcopenia, which has a major impact, not just on our metabolism and our safety so we don't fall, but literally on our well-being as we age.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And what's important is looking at things like C15. It helps with not just the mitochondria, but it helps everything that comes around. When mitochondria stop working, they'll actually turn on a suicide function. So they'll actually create reactive oxygen species and take out the cell if they aren't working properly.
Right.
So the importance of keeping those mitochondria working and having something that, because then that triggers inflammation, what we call inflammaging. C15 has been shown, it's a pleiotropic molecule, so it does a lot of different things, showing that it decreases over 18 different pro-inflammatory cytokines, including all of those that get involved when you get these angry cells, especially at the muscle level, that then start, leading to sarcopenia.
Where can people read about that if they want to learn more?
Right. So Discover C15 is where all of the peer-reviewed science on C15 is, which is separate. So it's from research from throughout the world, and you can search it by topic of interest or mechanism of action. There are a lot of studies, and with regard to, fatty 15, then that's all on fatty15.com is for the supplement.
Somebody asked on the restream from Twitch, how do exosomes play into this mechanism or into this mechanic? I want to know.
Exosomal processor, is there? I can't think of. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
This is really cellular membrane health. This is the real deal stuff. Are the health of our cells. And I plan to stay on this the rest of my life. I become a maniac.
Well, explain, what are exosomes?
Well, I always think of exosomes as like the things we deliver the vaccine in is sort of an exosome. These lipid bilayers that deliver something is sort of an exosome, in my way of thinking of it.
I have a cream that's an exosome.
Am I getting that wrong, Stephanie? Do anything different than that?
No, that's how I was taught it in vet school.
Yeah, exo meaning outside. That's why I always think of it. But I plan to stay on this product the rest of my life. I was about to say, I've become a maniac on oxidative health of the cell. I become a nut job about it. Frankly, I really think this is the aging. I just think that these sorts of processes are at the center of the aging process. And when people get all, they want to live, that guy that's trying to live to 120 and he's dedicating his whole life to it. By the way, that's not living. I don't know what that is, but that's not life. That's turning yourself into a lab experiment. But these oxidative, how should we frame it? The oxidative state of your cells is to me the critical ingredient in healthy aging. Very, very simply put. And NAD has had a lot of enthusiasm lately, and I think reasonably so. But pay attention to this. Go read about this. This is a big deal.
Yeah, we have, it's so core, lipid peroxidation and oxidative stress is so core to aging, related breakdown that, and then our cell membrane, because it has lipids in it, lipids are susceptible to attack by oxygen. And that's, oxidation is the same as saying rancidity, right? Everyone knows oil gets rancid. This is a stable fat that is resistant against that peroxidation, attack by oxygen and rancidity. And in fact, it explains why in the pacemaker theory of aging by A.J. Holbert, he showed that humans, long-lived mammals, humans, dolphins, and elephants have sturdier, stronger cell membranes with sturdy fatty acids compared to mice. And that actually explains longevity, how nature enables longer living species to live longer is exactly this, strengthening the cell membrane, protecting against oxidation. And if we're missing it, we accelerate aging. And so that's where this deficiency syndrome, cellular fragility syndrome, is so important, because when you talk to pediatricians today, they are seeing patients in which the kids are getting diseases of their grandparents before the parents. So when you say, do you think they're accelerated aging? They're absolutely nodding and saying that is exactly what's happening. These kids are aging faster than they should. So excited to have, a one solution.
Well, Stephanie, I've been swimming in Stephanie's waters for a while because I was so excited when I first heard about this.
Like a dolphin?
I was not really. More like a shark. More like I was like, God, this is easy.
Dolphins are cool too. Have fun.
And a dolphin would be fine too. I'm so impressed with it. Just congratulations on all of it. Tell people once again where they should go if they want to get the product or learn more. I guess it's Caleb, you can throw up our link, dr.com/fatty15, I think it is. And there it is. And tell them once again, because I really do want people to read the science because it's so impressive. Where would they go?
Thanks. Go to discoverc15.com. And again, that's where you can read all the literature. It'll help put you to sleep at night because it's got so much science for you to check out.
But also, if you want to get some fatty, go to drdrew.com/fatty15 and you'll get a discount.
Oh, that's true.
15% off. And we're all taking it. We believe in it.
Do you take, I know you can't. Yes, Stephanie can't say this yet, but how much do you take every day?
I take one a day.
See, I take two.
Oh, I'm supposed to take two?
Well, you're supposed to take one, but I take two.
Well, you're older than me.
She means biologically. She doesn't mean... She means biologically, not chronologically. So
no, I take that. I take 1,000 of the NR, and I take the fatty, and I take a bunch of other stuff.
I asked Stephanie for permission to go to two. So
I've never been a supplement person until this year.
No, because there have not been things like this. This is a new era of these sorts of interventions. And I think people are catching on to it.
Well, I think that my brain needs it more than yours.
Perhaps.
So
we'll leave it at that before this goes sideways. Stephanie, I appreciate it. I hope you'll come back soon and keep us posted. As I believe you have a couple of studies coming out soon, right?
We do. The science continues. So there will be a clinical trial results coming out in another month or so. And then some topics about brain health soon thereafter.
Excellent. We'll bring you back to report on that. Stephanie.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Drew. Great to be here.
You bet. So, very interesting day. A lot of good science presented. Dr. Fraiman to me is a
cool guy.
He's like Bhattacharya. He's another. One of the things about this whole experience is I found some heroes in the midst of all this for very different reasons. Bhattacharya really because he's just such an extraordinary human being, and that he was so unjustly criticized for trying to be helpful, and he walked through that with great dignity. Joseph, because he's a great scientist and kept following his instincts, and has uncovered quite a bit as a result.
Yeah, how many doctors take the time out to really do the investigation? But why is the government not talking about this now? Like, shouldn't this?
We heard him say it. I think he's right.
No, I didn't, because it was cracking up. I get that, that it's a touchy subject, but that's the reason we should talk about it.
Well, I agree with it. It's happening in Congress. I think the thing that he said was during a campaign, both sides have a lot to apologize for, and you can't say those were the guys that did it.
I know, but if somebody would just talk about it and go, listen, if I become president, I'm not going to let this kind of thing happen again. I'm not going to point the finger of who was wrong. We there were mistakes made, but we want to protect our people. Clearly, but we just need to make the right choices. And this is how I'm going to do it,
I completely agree with you.
We're not going to silence the doctors. We're going to let you get your medical care you want. Your body, your choice. Mandates are bullshit. Or whatever. Something.
Yes. I agree.
But we're the only ones to get it. Maybe it's beating it. Okay, it has been a long story. It just drives me crazy that it's not being brought up.
I agree with you. I don't disagree with you. And that's what I brought up with Dr.
We should send Biden some Fatty 15.
Well,
Did you see the news, Drew?
That's an interesting.
Biden has COVID right now. It was breaking during the show.
Oh, yeah.
COVID again. Yeah.
I heard he's taking Paxlovid. Yeah. No, I did. I saw that on some of the restream.
I'm serious. Let's get him to take some Fatty 15.
And guess what? He'll be fine. I believe that the picture of him. Remember how he used to walk up to the podium and take off that mask with great flair, that black mask. I think that will be, as history remembers those images, they will be seen as sinister. It was a dark move. It was a dark impulse. It was not something healthy or useful or helpful to the American public. And we have images of it now. And so there you go. Molten salt. You're saying that are you saying
gold?
Oh, I thought he was talking about the price of Paxlovid.
No, gold hit 2,500 an ounce, right?
The Rumble Rad people still, I know
that's high. It was like 1,900 when we were doing birch gold. I hope somebody bought some birch gold.
I know you guys are on my case.
Or Golden Crest.
Okay if I talk? What's that, Caleb?
Perhaps they should buy from
Golden now we have Crest. Golden Crest. Yeah, if you want to secure your IRA, check out, that's one of our sponsors as well. It would have been a good choice when we started promoting birch gold because it was like at 1,900 then. So it's a good thing.
Caleb, you were trying to say something?
Yeah, sorry, your connection keeps cutting out, so you're freezing. So they can hear your voice, but you do keep freezing. So we just need to get you a new Ethernet cable or something.
Caleb, the ghost is here, and he wants me to see whoever's coming tomorrow to watch Calling Out with Susan Pinsky, because we're going to have a show tomorrow at 3 p.m. And it seems like the ghost, he can't hear me, but the ghost is in our system, so we're going to sign out.
Also, Jennifer Say will be in here tomorrow as well, if you remember her from the Levi exhibit that was canceled. So she'll be in here also, and then Susan has her program at 3, and then next week. I'm looking for.
Well, it appears that we may have lost Drew, so I'm going to say farewell to everyone. We will see you guys tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And for Susan, I will say ta-ta.
Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.